Over the past year, I've read over 30 books on money, business, investing, and mindset. And today, I'm going to share the ones that had the biggest impact on me and what you can learn from them. If you pay close attention, there are common threads intertwined within all these lessons and stories. We're going to touch on money fundamentals, psychology, my favorite biographies, and most importantly, how you can start winning with money. In the comments below, please share what you think. What are your favorite books on money, and which ones have had the biggest impact on you? Please share with the rest of us. First, we're going to start on personal finance fundamentals, and one of my personal favorites, The Richest Man in Babylon. This book was written nearly 100 years ago by George S. Clason, but the principles are based off of actual clay tablets that were excavated from Babylon over 5,000 years ago. The timeless concepts are as relevant today as they were 5,000 years ago. The book follows the parable of the wealthy Acrad, who is the richest man in Babylon, as he shares his system for building wealth, which includes his 7 lessons for curing the lean purse. First, he discusses the importance of paying yourself first. For every 10 coins earned, always start by saving at least 1, meaning that 10% of your income should always be saved and invested. And I believe this figure should be at least 20%. This is also a Warren Buffett philosophy as well. Second, live within your means. For every 10 coins earned, spend no more than 9. Sounds simple, yet in America, with the extension of consumer credit, over 78% of Americans do not follow this advice. Third, put your money to work. This is the modern concept of investing, and believe it or not, humans invested 5,000 years ago just like they do today. Fourth, keep your money safe. What this means is that you should seek advice from the experienced and wise man who has a track record of making profitable investments and avoiding the high risk and unsafe options. Fifth, become a homeowner. By becoming a homeowner, the cost of living will be reduced over time, at which point there's increased opportunities for pleasures or investing. Affordability is a challenge right now in many markets across the United States, but with a long-term approach, the benefits can still make sense. Sixth, ensure your income. Provide in advance the needs for older age and protection of family. How do we do this in 2024? By having an emergency fund, life insurance, health insurance, among just a few options. Lastly, improve your skills as a way to earn more. Cultivate thy powers by studying and become wiser and more skillful. The parable of Acrad concludes, how it is more important to know how to build wealth than actually be wealthy. Because by understanding these skills, you can always rebuild even if everything is lost. Next, we're going to move on to one of the most eye-opening books on money you have probably never heard of, The Millionaire Next Door. Written by Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko, this book was the result of a 20-year study of how people become wealthy. Their findings were nothing short of shocking, because most people in America have it all wrong when it comes to wealth. There are who people think millionaires are, and then who they really are. The book opens with who most people think a millionaire looks like, and shares a story of a vice president of a trust department who dresses in very expensive suits, wears a fancy watch, drives an imported luxury car, and we've all been led to believe this is what wealth looks like. However, from countless interviews over 20 years, this is usually not what real wealth looks like most of the time. Here is the portrait of a real millionaire in America, according to their data. The average age is over 55. 2/3 are self-employed, and those that are not self-employed are usually professionals like doctors or accountants. 97% are homeowners. Most have never felt at a disadvantage because around 80% did not inherit anything. Most wear inexpensive clothing and drive American-made, pre-owned vehicles. Most are also planners, budgeters, and have a go-to-hell fund saved, and are fastidious investors, investing nearly 20% of their average household income and believe education is important. A lot of them live in regular neighborhoods. The authors also share the 7 behaviors that help the subjects achieve millionaire status, which include choosing the right vocation, being frugal, leaning towards financial independence, learning how to use time, energy, and money effectively, avoiding economic outpatient care, and nurturing self-sufficient children. This book really focuses on the consumption and behavior choices of those that achieve millionaire status versus those that do not. And there's a lot to be learned. Next, we have The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. This book provides easy-to-understand principles, investment strategies, and shares what you might want to consider. The book touches on why most people lose money in the market and teaches how to adopt the right mindset with the appropriate outlook to navigate through the ups and downs of bull and bear market runs. One of the biggest takeaways is that most people think in terms of what they can buy with it without considering the opportunity costs. And how their choices today are going to impact them tomorrow, 20 years from now, and beyond. It's not about someday trying to get to retirement. Instead, it's about having the options and being able to do what you want while learning to say no to the things that aren't going to serve you and your long-term vision. Spending less than you make, avoiding debt, and growing FU money are at the core of this book. And the author teaches how this can be accomplished through various investment strategies like index funds, bonds, real estate, retirement accounts, just to name a few. The path to wealth really can be simple. Just make sure you pick a path. Book number 4 is Wealth Habits by Candy Valentino. This book is so powerful because it is about a girl who was born to 2 teenage parents in a trailer park and grew up in extreme poverty. She didn't have the connections, never graduated from college, had no money, no corporate background, but still went on to successfully start, scale, and sell multiple businesses in various industries. She has developed a vast real estate portfolio and has an 8-figure net worth and has become a Wall Street Journal best-selling author. Candy shares her 4 lessons, the first of which is play the long game and why it is so important to let compound interest go to work and learn how to value investing over spending. To illustrate her point, she shares a story about Warren Buffett, who's worth over $133 billion, achieved 99.8% of his wealth after his 52nd birthday. Lesson number 2, show up anyway. She talks about why it is so important to show up anyway, even when you have no idea what to do. Why it's critical to show up when you don't want to, and even more important, when the camera and all eyes are not on you. She shares why 80% of success in life comes from just showing up. When you learn how to consistently show up, what you are really doing is putting acceptance, dedication, and resilience into practice and being committed to your vision without excuses. Lesson number 3 is nothing is owed to you. And this lesson is also discussed at length in The Millionaire Next Door, although it is defined as economic outpatient care. Candy believes that entitlement and the desire for instant gratification has the incredible cost of robbing folks of their dreams, puts them in chains, and keeps them in the poorhouse. She argues that when someone believes something is owed to them, it makes it more difficult to endure adversity, which then results in problem avoidance, passivity, and laziness. Lesson number 4, her final lesson, is learning the power of gratitude. Despite believing that life doesn't owe you anything, we should all be incredibly thankful for all that we have, even if we don't have everything that we want. Candy learned to have appreciation for having food on her plate as a child because it didn't always happen. She learned to be thankful for every gift because she received gifts so infrequently. She makes the case that those who are less fortunate actually have some incredible opportunities and advantages because when you have the ability to learn to work harder, be more appreciative, and be more intentional than those who are blessed with more, when you have less, you have the opportunity to become more. Book number 5 is the classic Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Robert shares the 2 stories of both of his dads. The first is his biological father, who is his poor dad, and the second is the father of his best friend, who is his rich dad. The book highlights the contrasting viewpoints between rich dad and poor dad, their views on money, how they spend their time, and what they choose to invest in. Robert's rich dad helped mold his money beliefs, were often counterintuitive what all of us have been taught, while poor dad encourages Robert to stay in the safe and well-traveled road, which includes going to college and becoming an employee in a safe industry. Robert teaches the flow of money, while the poor and middle class have to work for money, while the rich have money work for them. Robert teaches the flow of money, why the poor and middle class have to work for money, and how the rich have money work for them. He also makes the argument that it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep, which is also a form of paying yourself first, which is touched on in The Richest Man in Babylon. He also makes the argument how financial education, once learned, can be a pathway to enormous wealth. Robert focuses on 7 themes throughout the book, which include the importance of financial literacy, understanding the cash flow quadrant, the power of entrepreneurship, the difference between good debt and bad debt, and yes, there is a difference, the importance of passive income and investing, understanding how to escape the rat race, and the power of positive thinking. This book is a really fun and easy read, and for anyone who's serious about wanting to grow their wealth and start making better money decisions, it is also a must-read. Now we move on to section 2, which are books on mindset, psychology, and behavior. First is The Obstacle is the Way, written by Ryan Holiday. The fundamental theme of this book is that adversity is a gift, and that the obstacle is the opportunity. The author shares timeless examples of how American icons such as John D. Rockefeller, Amelia Earhart, and Steve Jobs used their problems, frustrations, and failure as a formula to transform their obstacles into opportunities, despite the impossible situations they faced. 3 of the important ingredients of this formula are perception, action, and will. Perception can be a source of strength or weakness. When the right perception is taken, it is much easier to remain calm and impermutable and see things the way they truly are, neither good nor bad, which becomes an incredible advantage in overcoming obstacles and leads to better decision making. The second ingredient is action. While action may be commonplace, the right action is not. Only directed action matters. Learn how to take step-by-step action to dismantle obstacles and develop courage and creative application and persistence and flexibility to advance forward in the best interest of our goals. Our movements and our decisions define us, and that is why it is so important to act with the deliberation, boldness, and persistence necessary. Action is the solution to cure our predicaments. Finally, we have will. Will is our internal superpower, which can never be affected by the outside world. Willpower needs to be cultivated, and we must all prepare for adversity and turmoil and learn how to practice cheerfulness even in dark times. True will is quiet humility, resilience, and flexibility. When we can be optimistic, thankful, and unwavering even in the valleys, that is when we can become unstoppable. Ryan states that the obstacle and the path becomes the path. Never forget that with every obstacle, there is an opportunity. In virtually every area of life, we're going to face incredible adversity. The icons he mentions in his book, like Rockefeller and Jobs, didn't face different problems. They just created different solutions. When you can turn your problems into blessings, then everything that enters your life can be a force for good. Next, we have 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. This is my 2024 book of the year. I've already read it 3 times, and I will continue to read it nonstop throughout the year because I believe the lessons and the insights are that powerful. Author Dr. Benjamin Hardy shares story after story and example after example of how achieving 10X results is actually much easier than achieving 2X results. And here are some of the common core beliefs of his arguments. Dr. Hardy believes that most people don't set high enough goals for themselves. He believes in setting goals that are so big and outrageous that the goal actually frightens you and seems impossible. The reason that setting impossible goals are so important is because when you have an absolute outrageous goal, it provides tremendous clarity. For example, if someone wants to increase their income 10x in 1 year, they more than likely would have to be willing to let go of a lot of their current situation. They'd probably have to change everything about their behavior, how they spend their days, who they spend their time with, and even what job they have. Going 10x is oftentimes letting go of the 80% of the current life as you know it and embracing the 20% that you're getting the most out of. The reason that this is so difficult though is because it's so uncomfortable to actually let go of the 80% of your current life as you know it. Because most people aren't willing to set impossible goals, they instead focus on goals that are much more realistic and mediocre in nature, like getting a 15% raise in income instead of increasing their income tenfold. And mediocre goals, mediocre jobs, and a mediocre life is actually much more competitive because so many more people are going after the same things, while very few are really going after the big, needle-moving, life-changing projects. To illustrate his point, he shares a real-life story of a hiring recruiter who's hiring for 2 jobs. The first job pays around $60,000 annually, while the second job has a starting salary of around $400,000 annually. The results are absolutely astounding. The job with the $60K salary has over 50 times the amount of applicants as the one with the $400K salary, making it exponentially more competitive. And the reason for this is because most people write themselves off and disqualify themselves for not having the skills or requirements needed for the higher paying job. Small goals, goals that are linear in nature, have multiple ways of achieving them. For example, if you wanted to increase your sales by 25%, you can make more calls, shake more hands, do a better job with following up, teach online classes, lead in-person seminars, and there's an infinite number of ways to accomplish that. But if you were looking at 10x your sales, the reality is that once you really think through that, there are likely 1 or 2 ways to really accomplish that. It is going to require that you let go of most of what you're doing now and commit to new habits, behaviors, and disciplines. Most people don't achieve 10x results because they're either doing the wrong things, or they aren't doing the right things, or they aren't doing the right things well. 10x growth is about calling your future self the one who has already achieved amazing results, has growth-producing habits, and is disciplined at the highest level. It is about calling that version of you 30 years in the future into the present, and not trying to linearly grow into that person. Dr. Hardy also believes that how you do anything is how you do everything. And when you live with intention in one area, it'll spill into every area of your life, and your wins will start to compound exponentially. He also makes the argument in how 2x thinkers are always focused on the destination, and how 10x thinkers use their starting point as a point of reference to see how far they've come. Remember, it's not about where you end up, it's about how far you've come, because we all have different starting lines. Finally, another important concept is what he calls the gap versus the gain, and he actually has an entire book on this subject. When you look back and see how far you've come from, instead of agonizing over how far you have left to travel, it gives you the ability to operate from the perspective of living in the gain, which is living life from a place of abundance, supply, and thankfulness. You look at your experiences and even your adversities as tremendous blessings. Where someone living in the gap lives their life in fear, has anxiety, and is always focused on how far away they are from their goals and what they don't have, their dream job, their dream life, and doesn't even have the capacity to be thankful or appreciative for all that they have. This really is one of the best books I've ever read. Now we move on to section 3, which is my favorite biographies of the past year. When it comes to biographies, I always say, why would you read fiction when you can read someone's real life story? What I love about reading biographies is the incredible adversities the subject faced and how they overcame it. Remember, the bigger the problem, the better the story, and the best stories share how they overcame the biggest challenges. The 3 books I'm going to reference on today are American Made, the Sam Walton story, Snowball, the Warren Buffett memoir, and The Everything Store about Jeff Bezos and the age of Amazon. Instead of breaking each book down individually, I'm going to share the common threads with all 3. Here are the top 4 themes found in all 3 books. The first is an unwavering belief. Sam Walton, Warren Buffett, and Jeff Bezos all shared an unwavering belief. And in fact, it was more than a belief, it was better described as a calling. Because they felt they were being called, they never questioned themselves or their vision, even when the world laughed and mocked them. Jeff Bezos shares his story, how he was openly mocked when he left his high-paying job in New York to move cross-country and to open an online bookstore in Seattle. Initially, no one would invest in his dream, and he was reliant on a loan from his parents to start what would become Amazon. Industry peers told him it was a terrible idea. Others told him he would never be successful, but he never questioned himself and never listened. Sam Walton was the same way. In fact, he didn't open his first Walmart until the age of 44. But just 25 short years later, he was the richest man on the planet. All 3 of these men played the long game. The second core value is frugality. This might sound shocking because we've all seen pictures of Bezos on his yacht and his luxury lifestyle, but here's the real story. All 3 entrepreneurs built their businesses by being extremely frugal, and they put this into practice both personally and professionally. For example, despite having a net worth of over $130 billion, Warren Buffett still lives in the same home today that he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He drives a regular car and does not live a high consumption lifestyle despite becoming a billionaire over 40 years ago. That's because his first rule in business is reinvest the profits and never use profits to fund a high consumption lifestyle. He learned as a youngster the power of compounding and that today's dollars are tomorrow's millions. Sam Walton also had his 10 rules of business, and rule number 9 for Sam was control your expenses better than your competition. Sam believed this because he knew that by keeping expenses and overhead low, it would give him a competitive advantage and allow him to take on more risk and new business ventures. He also knew that not every idea was going to work out, and by keeping his expenses low, he would still have the ability to pursue new ideas that were riskier in nature and actually allow for some failure. But those that did work out, including starting the membership-based Sam's Club years after starting Walmart, became financial windfalls. Sam also lived a very frugal personal life as well. He drove regular cars, lived in a nice but not extravagant home, and his children did not grow up in luxury. And do you know who Sam Walton had an incredible influence on? Jeff Bezos. Bezos shares in his memoir that Sam Walton's Made in America biography had an incredible influence on him, and perhaps nothing greater than the importance of being frugal with costs and personal consumption. One of the reasons Bezos was so committed to keeping costs low was so his startup could match any competitor's price, even if it meant losing money. And early on, he lost a lot of money. In fact, Amazon didn't even turn a profit for the better part of 10 years. This philosophy allowed Amazon to gain influence, attract their audience, and in time, grab market share. And personally, even though he may live an extravagant life now, while he was still in building mode, he was extremely frugal with money. In fact, despite having a net worth of over $10 billion, he still drove to his rundown office in a beat-up sedan and sat at a desk that was literally built from the doors ripped out of the hinges in his office hallway, all to keep costs low. If you are getting any value out of this video, please join this community by subscribing. Remember, financial literacy isn't taught in schools, and it's up to us to learn, to share, to grow, and to build together. Now, let's get back to the video. The third principle is growth and innovation. All three of these American icons never sat idle and constantly pushed themselves and their business to keep innovating and growing. Buffett shares a story when he acquired See's Candies, and at the time, it was one of the first larger acquisitions he'd ever made, and he had no idea on how to value it. Despite not having the valuation experience early on in his career, he recognized the quality of the product and the potential this opportunity had, and still had the confidence to move forward despite the risk. Sam Walton eventually pivoted from the variety store business and transitioned into the discount retailer business, and only opened his first Walmart after owning 15 plus variety stores. He was already extremely successful before ever opening his first Walmart, and he could have lived a rich life without Walmart, but he felt he had an obligation to keep growing. The industry at the time was dominated by department stores like Sears, and the idea of a discount retailer like Walmart was completely foreign. Not only did he disrupt an entire industry, he ended up becoming one of the most successful entrepreneurs of the 20th century. What is shocking about the Bezos story is just how much he innovated. From opening distribution centers to mergers and acquisitions to developing products like the Kindle that were highly criticized, he, like Walt and Buffett, consistently challenged himself, Amazon, and innovated at every opportunity and every corner. The fourth is the approach to adversity. All three men faced incredible adversity, from lawsuits to market crashes, declining share prices, and shareholder criticisms. All three men never let their problems define them, rather their solutions. They turned their obstacles in their path to become their path. They use these adverse moments to become better businessmen, more engaged leaders, and solve each problem as an opportunity to overcome and truly persevere. It's about willpower. They all share a spirit of never giving up. Well, that's a wrap. What recurring themes did you see in each of these books? Are there any that you're interested in reading for yourself? Please share in the comments below. Until next time, this is Benjamin Adams with American Money 101.